Welcome to the Nerds and Friends podcast. Today we have Wayne Turmel joining us. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. Really excited to talk to you about your books. The one that grabbed my attention was The Count of Sahara, or Count of the Sahara. I really want to hear about that one first, and then we'll talk about your other books and go from there.
Well, Count of the Sahara was me having my late midlife crisis in public. Almost 10 years ago now. When I was turning 50, I had this crisis of the soul, right? Where I had written stand-up comedy and I'd written screenplays and I'd written nonfiction books, but I would never be a real writer until I tackled a novel. And fortunately, I was obsessed with this character, this guy named Byron de Prorock, who was a real archaeologist. And for about 6 months, he was the most famous archaeologist in the world. And then everything turned to cat poop in a hurry.
Whoa. You have me instantly intrigued. I'm like, tell me more.
Well, it's funny. He's the only archaeologist from the 20s with an IMDb page.
Oh, wow.
Which is fascinating because he was so desperate to be famous that when he was young in the 1919, 1920 in Paris, he actually appeared in a couple of movies.
Wow, that's awesome.
So he was desperate for stardom, and of course that turned out to be his downfall. Was he tended to make up stuff that he didn't do.
Downfall of many a good scientist.
Between being a pathological liar and a hopeless drunk, it didn't last long. So Count of the Sahara was my first novel, and I'm really proud of it. It was pretty ambitious for a first novel because it does two things. It tells the story of Byron on this 6-month barnstorming trip in the winter of 1927. And there's a young kid who gets assigned to be his gopher, basically. Set up his projector and do all that kind of stuff. But it keeps flashing back to a year earlier when he was actually on the expedition.
Oh.
And the difference between what he's telling the world and what his reputation says and what actually happened.
That's cool. I like that.
It was so cool. You wouldn't believe. I was obsessed with him anyway. I had read all of his stuff and gotten fascinated by it. But the trip that I write about in the book was financed by this little university in Wisconsin that was like 90 minutes from my house in Chicago at the time.
Wow.
And I said, I'd like to see the archives if that's okay. And they said, when can you be here?
That's awesome.
And I showed up and they brought me 3 boxes of stuff and a pair of gloves and said, here, knock yourself out.
What?
So the nerd in me was just like, boing. It was so much fun.
Oh, that's amazing. I got goosebumps right now. Like, that's an author's dream right there, where they're just like,
it was so fun.
You want to do research? Here you go.
Well, and then the timing of the book, when the book came out, turned out to be the 90th anniversary of the trip.
What?
And they invited me to come and speak at the exhibit and do all that stuff, which is cool because this tells you what you need to know about history. According to the university, the hero of the trip was this guy named Alonzo Pound, who worked for the university and taught there. But to the rest of the world, Byron was like the brains of this operation, and Pound was just the schlubby guy who was responsible for the money.
That's fascinating.
It is so well. That's why it's so funny. My first 3 novels were historical fiction because I am such a geek for this stuff, right? And once you start doing the research, it's down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And you just have way too much fun with it. And then, of course, I turned around once I had this little run of historical fiction going. I blew it all up and did Johnny Lycan, and I did this silly werewolf detective novel.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was like, what am I going to do? Tick off both my readers? It wasn't like I had a giant contract I had to fulfill. I can write any darn thing I want, man.
That's the ultimate freedom. Yeah, that's why I've enjoyed self-publishing my books. I'm like, I answer to no one. Like,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
my imagination. It's great.
Well, but like when you're on a film set, there are 87 people you got to answer to, and you got to do all this stuff. And
Yep.
when you're writing, it's just you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well said.
If you can't amuse yourself, you're doing something horribly wrong.
Yes. Oh, I'm often amused by my writing, and it's a good feeling. Well,
It
tell
is
me
indeed.
more how you got into writing. Like, what was your first project? What was the introduction to it?
As a kid, well, actually, my first introduction to books, I am old enough, sadly, that when I was a kid, my Uncle Johnny had a box of Classics Illustrated comics.
Ooh.
Which are now, worth gazillions of dollars, right? Like, Where do I get my hands on those bad boys? But the value of them in 1970 was that it introduced me to great stories, right? Frankenstein and Robin Hood and all of these stories. I read them as graphic novels. We called them comic books back in the day when I was a young man. But they were graphic novels, literally graphic novels. And that got me reading good books, I think, ahead of schedule. Nice. So I've always wanted to be a writer. I always, stupid me, I thought it was incredibly glamorous until years later when I tried to get a job in Hollywood. And, the big joke is everybody knows the Polish actor, she slept with the writer. But out of high school, I started doing stand-up. And I did stand-up for like 18 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and had a career going. This was back in the 80s and very early 90s when you could have a career doing stand-up. And I left Canada, moved to LA to become a big star. Had a couple of screenplays optioned, but nothing ever happened with them. And then the wife and child insisted on eating. And oh, by the way, 80% of the comedy clubs in the country closed within 3 months of each other.
What was that from?
Overexposure, the collapse of the cocaine market, which fueled an inordinate amount of those clubs. It was just the boom was over. Yeah. And I was in this weird place as a performer where I was working steadily, but I was working all the B clubs. And when the B clubs disappeared and I was in LA, nobody in LA knew who I was. And you needed TV exposure and all that good stuff in order to headline the clubs and make money. And you need to be in LA to work for free, to get in front of people, to get the TV gigs. And I was busy making a living.
Yeah.
Until I wasn't. And I had to run away from the circus and get a big boy job. Yeah. And this is all still relevant. Even in the big boy job, I found a way. I was in the corporate training business and I started writing articles and then chapters in books and then started writing books. I actually had one of the very first business podcasts. It was something called the Cranky Middle Manager Show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which was kind of legendary back in the day. Now it's gone. You can't find it anywhere. But I was continuing to write. And then, like I say, around 50, even though I had been published and all of this stuff, and I'd been writing my whole life, I'd never be a real writer. Until I did a novel.
Yeah.
And that's where Count of the Sahara came from. And then I'd already had the idea for the Luca Lapu books, the Acra's Bastard and Acra's Orphans, which is, if you know Kipling's Kim, it's basically Kim set in the Crusades. It's he's a 10-year-old, half Syrian, half French orphan who gets basically trained as a spy. Ooh. And gets caught up in the Crusades and the Battle of Hattin and the fall of Acre and all that good stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, like I say, I got this silly idea for Johnny Lycan. And, book 1 is out, book 2 is out in December, book 3 is partially written.
Congrats.
So Johnny's going to be around for a while.
That's awesome. Hopefully Johnny will get adapted to a TV show or movie.
I don't know. You know any producers? You know anybody who knows around here?
I'm a producer. No, that's my day job.
I know. That's hence the joke.
I
it's a joke, son.
I keep forgetting that people actually watch the podcast before they come on.
The smart ones do.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that.
I've been in this game a long time, brother. You get to know what you're getting into.
Tell me about the podcast scene when you were first working on the Cranky Middle Manager, because that sounds like a really revolutionary
thing. The podcast scene didn't really exist. The word had only been invented like 6 months earlier.
Oh, wow.
But I had written this book. My very first book, actually, was called A Philistine's Journal, An Average Guy Tackles the Classics. And it was basically a book of humorous essays.
Nice.
And I thought, I want to do a business version of that. And I kind of kicked around, and I went, it's a lot of work, and I don't know. And then I heard about this thing called podcasting, which was essentially do-it-yourself radio. And since I was a broadcast journalism major for the frighteningly small time I got any education, I kind of figured out how to do it. And this was at the time when you needed to have a place to host your podcast. You couldn't just throw it out into the universe. And there was a company in Australia called the Podcast Network. And I reached out to Cam and said, I got this idea for a show. What do I do? He said, get Audacity and Skype and do your thing. And it took me a while to figure it out. I'm not the most technically adept guy, but I figured it out. And then 360 episodes later,
that's awesome.
It helped launch, and it's incredible. It introduced me to all the players in my field.
That's awesome.
I started my own company in the middle of that, and of course, it served as a marketing thing. And it introduced me to the guy who bought my company and is now my boss. So,
wow.
For those of you awesome. In podcast land wondering why you do this to yourself, that's the answer. What I could never do really is monetize it, because there was no way to monetize it back in the day. But it was great. But it was a half hour a week for 7 years. I mean, it was insane.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
If there's a way to stroke my ego and not make any money at it, I have done it.
Yeah.
I am the king of never monetizing a single good idea.
Monetizing is hard. The good ideas, I feel like I'm decent at them, and I like putting my work out there. But yeah, monetizing is hard. It's
it is. But I love it, and I love. I tell people in my bio that I write fiction to save what's left of my sanity, and it's not far off. There aren't a lot of people who have to leave. Enough people in show business. I don't need to tell you the levels of despair and weirdness. Yes. But when you leave the business, or essentially the business leaves you, which it does to almost everybody eventually, it's really rare to find something that gives you some sense of accomplishment and feeling like you're actually doing something.
Yeah.
My wife was an actress in LA in the 70s and 80s and had a little bit of a career. And, when she hung it up, she just hung it up. And I don't know how she did that without losing her mind.
That's impressive.
Well, she raised my daughter and me. So it's not like she didn't have things to do, right?
Yeah. No, that's all. I mean, that I totally resonate with that, because like if my work is what gives me, between the writing and working in the film industry, it's like I just like being creative. And so I can tell that you have that too. And being
Absolutely.
creative and hilarious and witty. That's like, you got to have outlets for that. So that's awesome that you're doing that, you know?
Well, if you don't vent it safely, it shows up in corporate meetings, which is not where you want it to show up.
No.
I swear, my first 3 years of my first big boy job, 90% of my work was telling the voice in my head, you can't say that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, corporate land is very different than movie sets or comedy clubs, I'd imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, you've had quite an exciting career. I really appreciate you sharing all this with us, Wayne. This is really neat.
It's fun. I don't know what possible use it is to anybody. It's not like I'm saying, hey, follow my career path, kids.
But it's
you can be
fascinating.
just like me.
I think people would want to have that. I mean, you've done so many creative projects and had so many things that connect with people. Like, that's really neat, you know?
I have been so incredibly lucky.
And
it's
talented.
funny.
You got to be talented to be lucky in my books.
Yes, but you know as well as anybody that talent is the price of admission. It's like you got to have talent to get in the door. Everything beyond that is a crapshoot.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you want, look at something like American Idol. Yes, there are these incredibly talented people. A, most of them never go on to be heard of.
Right.
And B, it's a brilliant premise for a show because they're never going to run out of contestants. You can walk into any church in America and find somebody that'll blow your socks off singing.
It's true. That's true.
There is no shortage of people who can do that and who have real talent.
Yeah.
What is it that separates Carrie Underwood or whoever from somebody else? It's the same thing in stand-up,
Yep.
I can name you 100 guys who were hysterically funny that nobody ever heard of.
Yeah, I like going to the smaller stand-up shows when I have free time in LA and going to like the Laugh Factory and the Comedy Store. And
sure,
there's a lot of people who I like to follow, and they have small followings, but they're really talented. So you're absolutely right. Where it's really tough to make it past the initial point of entry.
Well, and the trick is not to get all bitter and twisted about it.
Totally.
Right, because you can say, well, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, whatever, right? Or you can adjust to life and, like I said, I'm really lucky to have this outlet. And especially the last little while, and just inside baseball for the listeners, you're on a list of a whole bunch of bloggers and podcasters that people get handed when they go to work when they hire a PR guy.
Yeah.
Right. And then you take a look at them and say, want to talk to this person. Don't ever darken my door, this person. But so I've been doing this a lot the last few weeks, and I love it.
It's fun.
I love
right?
talking to writers. I love communicating. I mean, it's what I do. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. This has been a really fun talk. I'm having a great time.
I'm glad. I have no idea what the hell we've accomplished, but that's okay.
We've had a fun talk, which in podcasting that's the gold standard right there. Yeah,
that is half the battle, to be sure.
Oh yeah.
And so we just, like you say, the only thing left on my bucket list, and it's not really a bucket list thing, right? I would love it to happen, is for somebody to take a look at Johnny Lycan and go, ding, 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 Netflix, I got something for you. That would be ideal.
Yeah. And,
when the third book is out and it shows that it has legs, and I've already, like all good writers, I've already cast it in my head.
Nice. I want to hear, if you're comfortable sharing, who's your cast member? Give us your rundown.
The first book, there are two characters that I've got. One is Johnny, and Johnny, and I'm blanking on one of their names. There's one of two actors, Robbie Amell.
Okay, yeah.
From the Arrowverse kind of thing would be great. And there's a kid on Chicago Fire.
Let me look it up.
There's a kid on Chicago Fire. He's Latino from Miami. I'm blanking on his name.
Is it Joey Menuso?
No.
Or Joe Menuso, sorry.
Alejandro, I don't, it doesn't matter. But they make a good. The problem with Johnny is that he's only 30 years old, so it's like you got to cast him quick. The other problem with Johnny is that he's a very hairy guy, and nobody in Hollywood has any body hair. Like, even if you look at the shapeshifter,
I'm always the
books,
hairiest actor on set when I do acting. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if you look at the shapeshifter novels on Amazon, you go into that subgenre.
Yeah.
All the cover guys are like these bare-chested whatever. And I go, you're a wolf. What do you wax 27 days of the month? Right? So that's that. Nurse Ball, who is this 50-year-old badass who winds up having a thing with 30-year-old Johnny.
Nice.
Yancey Butler.
Yeah, that name sounds so familiar.
Perfect. Yancey Butler was on Witchblade. She's done a bunch of straight-to-video stuff.
Okay.
She is the perfect mix of attractive and deeply crazy.
Nice.
She would be perfect for Nurse Ball.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I've got... Talk to me, producers.
I'll tweet this podcast to her so she can hear it. I'm sure she's on Twitter.
I think she knows I exist. Okay. I've done without being overly creepy. I've done the fantasy casting thing and just dropped her Twitter handle and never got a response, which is probably just as well. Right, because the response would be from her attorneys going, "What are you doing?" I swear this is a non-creepy, non-stalking kind of thing. I just think she'd be perfect.
Oh yeah, totally. Not everyone reaches out on Twitter to like fantasy cast their projects. I've done that. So if I'm writing a book and I'm like, this character is inspired by this actor, and for me, I just have the worst luck where all the people I fantasy cast just aren't on Twitter, and I'm just like, well, there goes that shameless self-promo opportunity right there.
Yeah, exactly. If I get that, if I remember the name of the kid, I'll send it to you.
Oh, cool. For
sure. You can put it in the show notes or whatever.
Or we'll just tweet it to him. Yeah. Be like,
yeah,
hey,
exactly.
Do you want to take your career in a weird angle? Let's go for it. It's a werewolf story. Let's do it.
Well, the only thing is, it's like I'm looking for guys that would be willing to have a little chest hair. I mean, the thing about Johnny is he's okay looking. He's not a bad looking guy, but he's not ruggedly handsome. And he's hairy. He's a freaking werewolf, right?
Well,
he's got hairy chest and hairy arms. And
I think if I start hitting the gym and lose like 200 pounds, maybe I could be in the running for Johnny.
Brother, I'm easy.
Yeah.
I'm easy.
That's cool. Okay. We'll start collaborating on the screenplay. We'll make it happen. Let my acting career take off.
There you go.
Well, awesome. So we've got The Count of the Sahara and the Johnny Lycan books, and then remind me of the name of the ones with the spy in the Crusades.
Yeah, the Luca Lapus stories. There were two: Acra's Bastard and Acra's Orphan.
Ooh.
And they're about kids. They're not for kids. They are not YA books, people.
Yeah.
I mean,
the Crusades are pretty not child friendly.
The Crusades are hard enough. Book one said the reason he has to leave the orphanage is there's an attempted molestation.
Ooh.
This, by the way, is what I hope the clock isn't running because I'm just babbling.
No,
but it was interesting as a writer when I was getting beta readers for Acra's Bastard. I got all these people that volunteered, and somebody ringed me out on Facebook in public saying, "How dare you put this out without a trigger warning? Because I'm a victim of sexual assault and it triggered my PTSD." And as a writer, I had two responses, one of which I'm proud of. The response I'm proud of is, "Oh my gosh, I'm terribly sorry. That obviously was not my intent. I'm sorry that happened." The second response inside my head was, "I must have written the snot out of that."
You're like, "Oh,
I must have nailed that to have that kind of impact on a reader." So I'm a terrible person is the lesson there.
I think trigger warnings are a good thing to have because, if you write something well, it can certainly trigger someone. So that's like, it's possible for both things to exist where you're like, I'm a great writer and I'm sorry that triggered that person, but goddamn, I'm good,
Well, the other thing is that trigger warnings are actually great ads.
I never thought of it that
way. If
way.
you read Amazon reviews, particularly around horror or dark fantasy or anything like that. This is sick. This is disgusting. Don't read it. It'll be like a 1-star thing, and then there'll be 5-star reviews going, it was sick. It was disgusting. It's great because it depends what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
If something isn't, if something is bloody and awful and horrible, and you would never voluntarily read something bloody and awful and horrible, you are allowed not to like it.
Of course.
Right. It's not for me. It wasn't my thing. On the other hand, if somebody says this is the sickest, most disgusting thing I've ever read, there are 20 people going, oh, bring
it. Yeah, exactly. Bring it on. Well, there you go.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the novels. Count of the Sahara, Akra's Bastard and Akra's Orphans, and Johnny Lycan and the Anubis Disc. And Johnny Lycan and the Vegas Berserker will be out in December.
Great title.
That for a professional plug.
That's a great title. I love it. The Vegas Berserker.
You know what? It's the nerd in me. When I was a kid, there was a series of books called The Executioner. Matt Bolan, The Executioner. And they were really thin little paperbacks, right?
Yeah.
And they always had The Executioner, Miami Massacre, Philadelphia Fury, whatever, right? They always had the character and then the title, which was supposed to be cheesy and a come on. And so that's what this is. This is like Johnny Lycan, and the MacGuffin in this one is the Anubis Disc. And the next one will be the Vegas Berserker, and Johnny comes to Vegas and he meets a berserker. And
awesome.
It's a total nerd move on my part, but hey.
Well, I can't wait to read these. These sound brilliant. I'm excited.
Don't let me stop you, man.
No, you've got a great, I love the diversity in your writing where you cover historical fiction, modern fiction, all these different topics and settings. It's really cool.
It's like having literary ADD.
Nothing wrong with that.
Apparently not. I have a good time. And I'm still I remember I was talking about going down the rabbit hole on my historical fiction. So Johnny is set in modern day Chicago. And, my research is basically my 29-year-old daughter. I'm using, that and her friends as kind of my baseline. So I thought, oh, this is easy. And then there's a scene where one of the characters does a tarot reading, and I spent a week and 4 books and a deck of tarot cards to research 1 page of this stupid book.
That's funny.
So, it's like I'm shiny objects.
That's how research can be, though. You'll have the broad stuff, and just rabbit holes everywhere.
The only thing is, with Johnny, there's less chance I'm going to wind up on a watch list.
Go on.
Well, if when I was writing the Luca books, and I'm looking at how do you say I'm going to kill you in Arabic?
Oh,
you got to know that somewhere somebody at a desk is going,
yeah.
What kind of sword would best slit somebody's throat?
Concerning. Yeah. No, I think there's many good joke fodder out there with the search history of writers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what's the weirdest thing I've ever looked up. Yeah, it's probably medical stuff with what happens if you get impaled with a sword here,
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the kind of stuff you want. How long does it take somebody to die if? What's great is you Google it in. Here's what's scary. When you start to do a Google search and it completes it for you.
And you're just like, oh, that's fucked up.
or you go, oh, I'm not the only one. Because it finishes it for you, which means somebody asked before you did.
Multiple times.
Yes.
Oh, the internet's a delightful place.
It is. It is the best of times. It is the worst of times.
Well said.
All of those things.
Well said. Well, Wayne, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. I think that's the best end note I can think of right there.
It works for me, brother. Thank you. It was fun. This was
great. Well, we got to have you back on another time. This was a great talk, and I want you to meet my co-hosts who unfortunately couldn't be here today to do some last minute tax stuff. But
well, what part of Johnny Lycan 2 is out in December is missing your radar?
There you go. There you go. We'll put that out. You'll be our first later in the year booking. It'll be great.
Thank you so much, man. This was fun.
Of course. Thanks so much. Thanks for everyone for listening to Nerds and Friends.